She spent her whole life protecting her son from danger, until one terrifying knock at the door revealed the most feared Mafia King in Chicago standing in the rain with a blood-covered little girl. But when Claire opened that door, she didn't just let Roman Cade into her home. She stepped directly into a deadly betrayal powerful enough to start a war and turn an ordinary mother into the queen of a criminal empire. The Bennett house sat at the far end of a quiet suburban street outside Chicago, wrapped in darkness and silence so heavy it almost felt unnatural. At 1:17 a.m., even the neighborhood dogs had stopped barking. Rain tapped softly against the windows while pale streetlights flickered weakly across empty driveways and sleeping homes. Inside the small two-story house, Claire Bennett sat alone at her kitchen table with cold coffee resting untouched between trembling hands. The exhaustion beneath her eyes looked permanent now. Bills covered half the table beside unopened medical envelopes and overdue notices she no longer had the energy to fear properly. The silence inside the house should have felt peaceful. Instead it felt wrong. Claire slowly lifted her eyes toward the hallway leading to her son's bedroom upstairs. 8-year-old Ethan finally slept after another nightmare-filled evening. For weeks he had been waking up terrified, whispering about strange cars parked outside the neighborhood and men watching the house from across the street. Claire told herself it was only stress. Only imagination. Only the kind of fear children created when adults failed to hide their own panic well enough. But tonight even she could feel it. Danger. Something unseen pressing quietly against the edges of her life. Claire rubbed tired fingers against her temple and forced herself to stand. She needed sleep. Another hospital shift started in 5 hours, and exhaustion already pulled heavily against her body. She switched off the kitchen light, leaving only the soft glow above the stove illuminating the dark house. Then the knock came. 3 slow knocks. Heavy. Controlled. Not loud enough to sound desperate. Not soft enough to feel normal. Claire froze instantly. Her breath caught halfway inside her chest while every survival instinct sharpened violently awake. Nobody visited at this hour. Nobody decent anyway. The sound echoed through the silent house again, somehow calmer the second time. Knock. 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 Her heart pounding immediately. Claire glanced upstairs instinctively toward Ethan's room before moving slowly through the dark hallway. Every sound suddenly felt amplified, the creak beneath her feet, the rain against the windows, her uneven breathing. Fear crawled through her stomach while her hand reached carefully toward the baseball bat hidden beside the front closet. Another knock. Closer now. Patient. Whoever stood outside knew she was awake. Claire swallowed hard and approached the front door cautiously without turning on the porch light. The darkness outside the stained glass panels looked almost solid beneath the rainstorm. She tried peeking through the side curtain first, but all she saw was the outline of a tall figure standing motionless on the porch. Waiting. Something about the stillness frightened her most. No nervous movement. No shifting posture. Only complete control. Claire tightened her grip on the bat before unlocking the deadbolt slowly. Every instinct screamed not to open the door. But Ethan slept upstairs and fear became dangerous when left unanswered too long. The door opened carefully. And the world outside changed instantly. The man standing on her porch did not look human at first glance. He looked like power wrapped inside darkness. Tall. Broad shoulders beneath a black overcoat soaked lightly with rain. Sharp jawline. Dark hair slicked back carelessly. His pale gray eyes locked onto Claire with a calmness so absolute it made her breath slow automatically. The storm moved around him instead of touching him somehow. Even the air near him felt colder. Roman Cade. Claire did not know his name yet. But her instincts understood immediately what kind of man stood before her. Dangerous. The kind of dangerous that never needed to raise its voice. For one terrifying second, neither of them spoke. Roman simply looked at her quietly, his presence dominating the small suburban porch without effort. Claire suddenly became painfully aware of how small her house looked behind her. How fragile ordinary life really was. You shouldn't have opened the door, the man said finally. His voice was low. Calm. Controlled. Not a threat. Somehow worse. Claire's grip tightened around the bat hidden behind the door. Who are you? Roman's eyes shifted briefly toward the second floor where Ethan slept before returning to her face. That tiny movement made fear explode through Claire's chest. How do you know my son is here? Roman did not answer immediately. Instead, his expression darkened slightly as if weighing how much truth to reveal. Rain continued falling silently around him while distant thunder rolled across the sleeping suburb. Then Claire noticed something else. Movement. Not behind Roman. Beside him. Hidden partially in the shadows near the edge of the porch stood a small figure she hadn't seen before. Tiny. Motionless. Wrapped inside an oversized dark hoodie. Claire's heart pounding harder instantly. Because the child standing silently behind Roman Cade was covered in blood. Claire Hayes had learned early that no one was coming to save her. Not her father, who walked out before she was old enough to remember his voice. Not the man who promised her a home, then disappeared the night she told him she was pregnant. Not the friends who smiled with pity and slowly stopped answering her calls when her life became too heavy to stand beside. By 24, Claire knew the exact sound of an empty apartment, the cold weight of overdue bills, and the quiet fear that settled in a mother's chest when the refrigerator light showed more space than food. But she was not a victim. She built her life from nothing with tired hands and a stubborn heart pounding against every closed door. She worked morning shifts at a bakery, evening shifts cleaning offices, and still found the strength to kneel beside her daughter's bed every night, brushing curls away from a sleepy forehead while whispering promises she could barely afford to believe. Her little girl Lily was 5 years old, soft-eyed and too smart for her age, the only reason Claire kept breathing when the world pressed close enough to crush her. Claire's life was small, but it was hers. A second-floor apartment above a closed flower shop. A cracked kitchen table. A jar of saved coins labeled Lily's future. No power, no control, no king watching from a black car outside. Just survival. Just loyalty to the tiny hand that reached for hers whenever thunder rolled over the city. She had spent years avoiding danger. She never walked dark streets alone. She never accepted help from men with expensive watches and empty smiles. She kept her head down when black SUVs rolled past the bakery windows. She taught Lily never to open the door, never to answer unknown numbers, never to trust anyone who made the air feel colder. Then Roman Moretti entered her life. He did not enter like a man asking for anything. He entered like a storm deciding which walls deserved to remain standing. The bakery bell had barely chimed when every conversation died. Claire looked up from packing bread into paper bags and saw him standing near the door in a dark coat, his face calm, his eyes dangerous enough to silence the room. Men like him did not need to raise their voices. Their presence carried war in the seams of their suits. Claire knew instantly that Roman was not safe. And yet, when his gaze found hers, something colder than fear moved through her breath. It was recognition without memory, warning without proof. He looked at her as if he already knew the shape of her struggle, as if he had counted every lock on her apartment door and found them weak. Her first instinct was not to run. It was to think of Lily. Her daughter was at school. Her backpack had a broken zipper. Her lunch had apple slices because Claire could not afford the cookies Lily wanted. That was what terror did to a mother. It did not ask, "Will I survive?" It asked, "Who will protect my child if I don't?" Roman stepped close to the counter, and the bakery seemed to shrink around him. His voice was low, almost gentle, but nothing about him felt gentle. He asked for Claire by name. Her fingers tightened around the paper bag. No one here knew her full name. The word mine did not leave his mouth, but something in his stare felt like possession, like a line had already been drawn around her life. Claire lifted her chin anyway. She had survived abandonment, hunger, shame, and every quiet betrayal that came disguised as love. She had been poor, scared, alone, but never broken. She was not a queen yet. She had no empire. But she had Lily, and for Lily, Claire could become powerful. Roman's eyes shifted past her shoulder. Claire followed his gaze toward the bakery window, expecting to see one of his men. Instead, she saw a small figure standing half-hidden behind Roman's black car. A child. A little boy with Roman's dark eyes, watching Claire like he already knew she was the only safe thing left. Roman Cade was not supposed to exist in places like this. Men like him belonged inside whispered conversations, federal investigations, and terrified rumors passed quietly between people smart enough to lower their voices. Claire Bennett spent years avoiding the edges of danger carefully enough to know exactly who Roman Cade was the second she saw those cold gray eyes standing beneath her porch light. The king of the Cade Empire. The most untouchable man in Chicago's underworld. Fear settled deeper into Claire's chest as the realization fully formed. She had seen his face before on late-night news reports and grainy internet articles discussing organized crime, missing politicians, shipping corruption, and syndicate wars stretching from Chicago to New York. Roman Cade controlled ports, casinos, private security firms, construction unions, and enough hidden money to buy entire neighborhoods quietly. Prosecutors failed against him repeatedly. Witnesses vanished. Rivals disappeared from power without explanation. And yet Roman himself almost never appeared publicly. Especially not standing outside suburban homes in the middle of the night carrying a frightened child. That was what shattered logic completely. Claire stared at him while rainwater slid slowly down the sharp lines of his black overcoat. Up close, his presence felt heavier somehow. Not loud. Not aggressive. Controlled. Everything about Roman Cade carried absolute control, the kind built through years of surviving betrayal and war without showing weakness once. The little girl beside him looked no older than 6. Her gray eyes matched his perfectly. Claire's protective instincts twisted painfully inside her chest. Ethan slept upstairs completely unaware that one of the most dangerous men in America now stood inside their quiet suburban nightmare. "You need to leave," Claire whispered again, though her voice sounded weaker this time. Roman's gaze shifted toward the dark street briefly before returning to her face. "I can't." Simple. Honest. Dangerous. Claire tightened her hold on the bat behind the door. "People like you don't knock on normal doors unless something terrible happened." For the first time, something shifted inside Roman's expression. Not anger. Conflict. It appeared only for a second before disappearing beneath calm restraint again, but Claire noticed it instantly. This man spent his life hiding emotion so completely that even tiny fractures became obvious. "You're right," Roman admitted quietly. Thunder rolled softly across the sleeping neighborhood while the porch light flickered once overhead. The little girl beside him swayed slightly from exhaustion, and Roman immediately steadied her with one careful hand against her shoulder. Protective again. Claire hated how confusing that looked. Everything she knew about men like Roman Cade painted them as monsters wrapped in expensive suits. Kings who built empires through fear and ruthless loyalty. Men connected to violent wars and buried secrets. Yet the child beside him stayed impossibly close to his side like she trusted him completely. And somehow, Roman looked more worried than dangerous. Claire's heart pounding harder now for an entirely different reason. "Who's after you?" she asked carefully. Roman stayed silent. That silence answered enough. Danger had followed him here. Real danger. The kind capable of making a man like Roman Cade appear personally instead of sending guards or soldiers. Claire suddenly remembered Ethan's recent nightmares about strange cars parked outside the neighborhood. Her stomach tightened instantly. How long had this been happening? Roman noticed the realization spreading across her face. "Nobody has touched your family," he said immediately. "If they had, I wouldn't be standing here calmly." The statement should have terrified her more. Instead, it strangely reassured her. Power moved differently around Roman Cade. He did not sound like men making threats. He sounded like someone used to giving certainty. That frightened Claire almost as much as the danger itself. The little girl finally looked up at Claire fully then, pale face trembling beneath the hood. There was fear in her eyes, but also exhaustion so deep it nearly broke Claire's heart. A tiny blood stain marked the sleeve of her oversized sweatshirt. Claire's maternal instincts reacted before caution could stop them. "She needs help," Claire whispered. Roman's jaw tightened slightly. "I know. You should take her to a hospital." "I can't trust hospitals tonight." Again too honest, too direct. Claire studied him carefully while rain continued falling around them both. Roman Cade stood like a man carrying the weight of an entire empire alone, but something about tonight looked different. His usual control remained intact, yet exhaustion lived beneath it now. Not physical exhaustion. Emotional. Like something had finally reached the one thing powerful enough to threaten him. The child. Claire slowly lowered the bat first. A dangerous decision. Probably a stupid one. But the little girl's frightened eyes reminded her too much of Ethan after bad dreams. Anne Claire Bennett spent her entire life surviving impossible situations by trusting instinct instead of fear. Roman watched her carefully as she stepped backward from the doorway. Then the king of Chicago's underworld crossed the threshold into her home completely uninvited, but somehow not threatening at all. The moment Roman Cade stepped inside Claire Bennett's house, the entire atmosphere changed. The warmth of the small suburban home suddenly felt fragile against the storm following him. Rain tapped softly against the windows while shadows stretched across the dim hallway leading toward the kitchen. Claire locked the front door immediately after them, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The little girl remained close to Roman's side without speaking. Now that she stood beneath actual light, Claire could see her properly for the first time. She looked around 6 years old with pale skin, tangled dark curls, and exhausted gray eyes identical to Roman's. The oversized hoodie hanging from her tiny frame was stained with blood near the sleeve and shoulder, though not enough to suggest catastrophic injury. What frightened Claire more was the silence. Complete silence. No crying. No panic. just deep terror hidden behind wide frightened eyes. Claire's protective instincts activated instantly. "Sit her down," she whispered sharply. Roman obeyed without argument, guiding the child carefully toward the living room couch. That alone unsettled Claire again. Men with Roman's level of power usually commanded others. They did not quietly follow instructions inside ordinary homes. The little girl flinched slightly when Claire approached, shrinking instinctively closer to Roman. Fear lived inside every tiny movement she made. Claire softened her voice immediately. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The child said nothing. Roman remained standing nearby, watching Claire with calm, unreadable eyes while rainwater dripped slowly from his coat onto the hardwood floor. Up close, exhaustion carved deeper lines across his face now. Not weakness. Roman Cade still carried the presence of a king even inside her tiny living room. But beneath that control, Claire sensed pressure building silently. Like a man running out of time. Claire carefully rolled back the child's sleeve and saw the injury. A deep scrape across her small arm. Bruised skin. Torn fabric. Not life-threatening but painful enough to explain the blood. Claire released a slow breath of relief before standing quickly. "I need towels and a first aid kit," she muttered automatically. Roman watched her disappear briefly toward the bathroom before speaking quietly for the first time since entering the house. "Her name is Lily." Claire paused slightly. Not because of the name. Because of the way he said it. Gentle. Protective. Human. That frightened her more than his reputation ever could. Claire returned moments later with supplies and knelt carefully beside the little girl. "Hi, Lily." Still no response. Lily's gray eyes stayed locked onto Roman like she was afraid he might disappear if she looked away too long. Claire noticed the tiny trembling in the child's hands while cleaning the scrape carefully. "She hasn't spoken since tonight," Roman admitted quietly. Claire glanced toward him immediately. "What happened?" Roman stayed silent. That silence answered enough. Danger. Something terrible had happened before they arrived here. Claire continued wrapping the bandage gently while tension thickened inside the room. The quiet suburban life she fought so hard to build suddenly felt impossibly far away. Roman Cade did not belong in ordinary places. Men like him carried war behind them naturally. And somehow that war had reached her doorstep. "You should call someone you trust," Claire whispered carefully without looking at him. "Family maybe. Security." Roman's expression darkened slightly. "That's the problem." Claire slowly lifted her eyes toward him. For the first time, real emotion cracked through his controlled calmness. Betrayal. Not spoken directly. But there. Heavy. Dangerous. Claire understood immediately. Someone inside his empire had turned against him. Roman moved toward the front window slowly, watching the dark suburban street through partially open blinds. "There was an attack tonight," he said quietly. "Someone knew where Lily would be before my own security team did." Claire's stomach tightened instantly. Loyalty broken inside an empire like Roman's meant chaos powerful enough to destroy cities quietly. If trusted people betrayed him, then nobody around him was truly safe anymore. Including her. "Why come here?" Claire asked carefully. "Why my house?" Roman looked toward her then. His gray eyes settled on her face with unnerving focus. "Because you were never connected to my world." Claire almost laughed bitterly at that. Too late now. A sudden sound interrupted the silence. Crunch. Claire froze instantly. Roman turned toward the kitchen window at the exact same moment. Another sound followed outside. Tires slowly rolling across wet pavement. Fear exploded violently through Claire's chest. The neighborhood outside had been empty all night. Until now. Roman moved instantly but calmly, stepping away from the window while his entire posture changed into something colder. More dangerous. More controlled. Lily rushed off the couch immediately and grabbed his hand tightly without a word. Claire's breath became uneven. Then she noticed it. A faint red laser dot appeared silently against her living room wall near the staircase leading upstairs. Near Ethan's bedroom. Her heart pounding uncontrollably now. Because the danger Roman Cade brought into her life had already found her home. The red laser dot disappeared from Claire's living room wall as suddenly as it appeared. But the fear remained. Heavy. Breathing beside them. Claire stood frozen near the staircase while her heart pounded violently against her ribs. Upstairs, Ethan still slept completely unaware that danger now surrounded their quiet suburban home. Roman Cade moved calmly through the darkness toward the front window again, every motion controlled with terrifying precision. No panic. Only calculation. That frightened Claire almost as much as the threat itself. Outside, headlights rolled slowly past the house before disappearing farther down the street. The silence afterward somehow felt worse. Roman watched the empty road for several seconds before finally stepping back from the blinds. "They're testing the perimeter," he said quietly. Claire tightened her arms around herself instinctively. "Who?" Roman's jaw hardened slightly. "People who already know too much." The answer sent cold fear through her stomach. Lily still stood beside him silently clutching the sleeve of his coat with tiny trembling fingers. Claire noticed the child shaking now, exhaustion and fear finally breaking through the numb silence surrounding her. Without thinking, Claire crossed the room slowly and knelt beside her. "You're safe here," she whispered gently. Lily looked uncertain. Like she no longer understood what safe meant. Claire knew that feeling too well. Years ago, after Ethan's father abandoned them, Claire spent months sleeping lightly beside her son because every unexpected sound felt dangerous. Every overdue bill. Every unknown number calling her phone. Every knock at the door. Fear changed people quietly over time until survival became instinct instead of choice. She looked up toward Roman carefully. "You can stay tonight." The words surprised even her. Roman's eyes locked onto hers immediately. "Claire? I'm not doing this for you," she interrupted softly. "I'm doing it for her." Lily finally looked at Claire fully then. Something fragile shifted inside the room. Roman stayed silent for several seconds before nodding once. "Thank you." The sincerity in his voice unsettled Claire again. Nothing about Roman Cade matched the monster newspapers described. Yes, danger followed him naturally. Power surrounded him so completely it changed the atmosphere of every room he entered. But beneath all of that lived something else now. Exhaustion. Restraint. Protectiveness so fierce it almost looked painful. Claire hated how human he suddenly seemed. She guided Lily carefully toward the kitchen while Roman remained near the windows watching the street. The little girl moved quietly beside Claire, small hands still trembling slightly beneath oversized sleeves. "Do you want tea?" Claire asked softly. Lily hesitated before giving the tiniest nod. That single response felt strangely important. Claire prepared warm tea slowly while the kitchen filled with soft golden light and rain tapped gently against the windows. For a brief moment, the house almost felt normal again. Almost. Then Roman entered the kitchen. The entire atmosphere shifted instantly. Close proximity with him always changed the air somehow. He filled space too easily. Tall. Controlled. Dangerous even in silence. Yet tonight Claire noticed details she missed before. The exhaustion beneath his eyes. The blood staining his side more clearly now. The careful way he kept checking Lily without realizing it. "You're injured," Claire said quietly. "It's nothing." "That's not an answer." Roman almost smiled faintly at that. Claire crossed toward him carefully with clean bandages in her hands. Every instinct warned her this was reckless. Men like Roman Cade destroyed lives simply by existing near ordinary people. Yet standing this close to him now, Claire sensed something unexpected beneath the power. Loneliness. Roman watched her silently as she adjusted the edge of his coat to examine the wound near his ribs. Her breath caught slightly at the warmth beneath her fingertips. Too close. Far too close. But Roman remained completely still, allowing her to help him without resistance. "Nobody's taken care of you in a while," Claire whispered before thinking. Something dark flickered across his expression. "Not safely." The answer lingered heavily between them. Claire wrapped the bandage carefully while Lily watched silently from the kitchen chair. For the first time since arriving, the child looked calmer. Safe. Roman noticed it too. His entire posture relaxed slightly, seeing Lily breathe easier inside Claire's home. What? The feeling appeared quietly inside him before he could stop it. Not possession. Protection. Claire protecting Lily. Claire protecting him. Dangerous thought. Roman stepped back slowly once she finished, his gray eyes never leaving her face. "You shouldn't trust me this easily." Claire gave a tired, humorless laugh. "I don't." "But you still opened your home. Because children deserve better than fear." Silence settled softly between them then. Outside, thunder rolled across the suburbs again while rain streaked the windows in silver lines. Lily finally spoke for the first time all night, her tiny voice barely above a whisper. "They killed my nanny." Claire froze instantly. Roman's expression darkened. And Claire realized with sudden horror that the frightened little girl sitting inside her kitchen was directly connected to a deadly war powerful enough to threaten an entire criminal empire. The moment Lily whispered the truth about her nanny, the warmth inside Claire Bennett's kitchen disappeared completely. Silence settled over the room like something alive. Rain continued sliding down the windows while thunder echoed softly through the sleeping suburbs, but Claire barely heard it anymore. Her attention remained fixed on the tiny frightened girl sitting at the kitchen table clutching a warm mug with trembling hands. They killed my nanny. The words sounded small, broken, yet powerful enough to change everything. Claire slowly lifted her eyes toward Roman Cade. For the first time since he entered her house, the king of Chicago's underworld looked dangerously close to losing control. His jaw tightened sharply while conflict darkened his gray eyes beneath the dim kitchen light. Not anger. Grief. That realization unsettled Claire deeply. Powerful men like Roman were not supposed to look wounded. Lily stared down at the tea quietly before speaking again in a soft whisper. She told me to run before the bad men reached my room. Her tiny fingers tightened around the cup. Roman came before they found me. Claire's breath caught slightly. Not dad. Not father. Roman. The detail mattered. It revealed distance where love should have existed naturally. Years of separation hidden beneath fear and survival. Claire suddenly understood something terrifying about the man standing across from her kitchen. Roman Cade did not know how to be ordinary. He knew how to rule, how to control, how to survive betrayal and war. But fatherhood looked unfamiliar on him. Claire glanced between them carefully now while pieces finally began aligning in her mind. The hidden attacks. The broken loyalty inside his empire. The terrified child. The way Roman protected Lily with quiet desperation despite clearly living far from her everyday life. Who is she really? Claire asked softly. Roman stayed silent for several seconds. Then he answered honestly. She's the heir to the Cade Empire. The room seemed to stop breathing. Claire stared at Lily again, but this time everything looked different. Not simply a frightened little girl covered in rain and fear. Lily Cade represented power dangerous enough to start wars inside Chicago's underworld. Whoever controlled Roman's heir controlled the future of his empire. And suddenly Claire understood why people were hunting them. Danger expanded instantly around her tiny suburban kitchen. Roman moved slowly toward the window again while tension sharpened visibly across his shoulders. The attack tonight was never about me, he admitted quietly. It was about Lily. Claire's stomach twisted painfully. Because children should never become targets in adult wars. She witnessed something, Roman continued. Something she was never supposed to see. Lily lowered her head immediately. Fear crossed her tiny face so quickly it nearly broke Claire's heart. Claire stepped closer instinctively, kneeling beside the child again. Hey, she whispered gently. You don't have to talk about it tonight. Lily looked at her carefully. Then for the first time she leaned slightly toward Claire instead of Roman. Trust. Small. Fragile. But real. Roman noticed it instantly. Something dangerous shifted quietly inside him watching Claire protect his daughter so naturally. Safe. That word echoed through his mind again. Claire Bennett somehow created safety inside chaos without power, money or fear controlling anyone around her. Roman spent his entire life building an empire through strength. Claire built safety through love. The difference shook him more than betrayal ever had. What did she see? Claire asked carefully without taking her eyes off Lily. Roman's voice turned colder. A meeting. Claire looked up slowly. Between who? My inner circle. Fear tightened instantly through the room. Loyalty inside the Cade Empire was legendary. Roman's captains followed him through decades of wars, federal investigations, and political corruption without breaking once. Betrayal among his closest people should have been impossible. Yet tonight proved otherwise. Roman finally turned toward Claire fully, and for the first time since meeting him, she saw exhaustion beneath the king's control clearly. Real exhaustion. The kind created when powerful men realize enemies already exist inside their own walls. Someone close to me arranged the attack, he admitted quietly. Claire's heart pounding again. Because that meant nobody around Roman could truly be trusted anymore. Not guards. Not advisors. Not even lifelong allies. And somehow she and Ethan now stood directly inside the center of it all. Roman stepped close enough that Claire could feel the tension radiating from him. The moment I brought Lily here, your family became connected to this war. Claire swallowed hard. War. The word sounded too massive for her small kitchen. Yet it was real now. She should have felt panic. Instead, protective instinct rose stronger. No one touches my son, she whispered firmly. Roman's eyes locked onto hers instantly. What? The thought appeared before he could stop it. Dangerous woman. Dangerously brave. Before either of them could speak again, Roman's phone vibrated sharply against the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a secure private line used only by one person. Marcus Vale. Roman's closest friend. His most trusted ally for 15 years. Roman answered immediately, but the moment Marcus spoke, all color disappeared from his face. Because the man Roman trusted more than anyone inside the empire had just confessed to the betrayal himself. The silence after Marcus Vale's confession felt more terrifying than gunfire ever could. Claire stood frozen inside the kitchen while Roman Cade lowered the phone slowly from his ear. His face remained calm, but the atmosphere around him changed instantly. The controlled restraint she had seen all night hardened into something colder now. More dangerous. More king than man. Betrayal had finally revealed its face. And it belonged to the person Roman trusted most. Lily noticed the shift immediately. The little girl moved closer toward Claire instead of Roman this time, tiny fingers clutching the sleeve of Claire's sweater tightly. Fear lived openly inside her gray eyes now. Roman stared toward the rain-covered windows for one long second before speaking quietly. Marcus just confirmed they're coming here. Claire's heart pounding violently again. How long? Roman checked the dark street outside. Minutes. The answer shattered whatever remained of normal life inside the Bennett house. War had arrived. Not the loud kind shown in movies. Not screaming chaos or destruction. This felt worse. Silent pressure tightening around every breath inside the house while danger moved invisibly closer through the sleeping suburbs. Claire immediately looked upstairs toward Ethan's bedroom. Protect. That instinct consumed everything else instantly. I'm getting my son. Roman stepped directly into her path. No. The word carried absolute control. Claire's eyes flashed with anger immediately. Move. Claire. My child is upstairs. Roman's expression tightened sharply because he understood that tone. She was no longer afraid for herself. Mothers became dangerous when fear transformed into protection. I'll bring him down, Roman said quietly. You think I'm trusting a Mafia King alone with my son? Roman stepped closer. You already trusted me with your life the moment you opened that door. The truth of it silenced her briefly. Close. Too close. Claire could feel the tension radiating from him while rain battered the windows harder outside. Somewhere in the distance, tires rolled slowly across wet pavement. They were here. Roman's gray eyes locked onto hers with frightening intensity. Listen carefully. The people coming tonight are not after money. They want Lily because whoever controls the air controls my empire. His voice lowered further. And now they know you're protecting her. Fear crawled coldly down Claire's spine. But beneath the fear, something else slowly awakened. Strength. She spent years surviving impossible situations quietly. Working double shifts. Raising Ethan alone. Carrying exhaustion without collapsing. She was not fragile. She was not helpless. She was a mother. And mothers protected what became theirs. Claire looked down at Lily clutching her sleeve with terrified trust. Then she looked back at Roman. Get Ethan, she whispered. Now. Roman moved instantly upstairs while Claire rushed through the house locking curtains and shutting off lights. Her breath came unevenly but her hands stayed steady. Adrenaline sharpened everything. The rain. The shadows outside. The dangerous stillness surrounding the neighborhood. A black SUV rolled silently past the house. Then another. Heart pounding. Claire grabbed Lily's hand carefully. Stay close to me, okay? Lily nodded silently. Footsteps thundered softly upstairs before Roman returned carrying Ethan half awake in his arms. Ethan blinked sleepily at the strangers filling his home before noticing Claire's expression. Mom? It's okay, baby, she whispered immediately. Stay quiet for me. Roman gently set Ethan down beside her. The movement looked surprisingly careful for a man built from power and violence. Ethan instinctively moved behind Claire protectively while staring uncertainly at Roman. Then every light outside the house suddenly went dark. The entire street lost power instantly. Danger exploded through the room. Roman's posture shifted immediately. Get down. Claire pulled both children close just as headlights flooded across the front windows from outside. Multiple vehicles now surrounded the quiet suburban house. War at her door. Lily buried her face against Claire instantly while Ethan gripped her hand tightly. Fear shook both children but Claire stayed standing. Something inside her refused to break now. Roman noticed it instantly. Most people collapsed under pressure like this. Claire Bennett became stronger. She became powerful. Roman moved beside her, calm despite the growing danger outside. There's a hidden exit through the basement, he murmured. Take the kids and leave while I hold them here. Claire stared at him like he was insane. You think I'm abandoning you? Roman blinked once, clearly not expecting that answer. The distant sound of car doors opening echoed outside. Time was running out. Claire looked toward the frightened children pressed against her sides. Then toward Roman Cade standing inside her home like a king moments before battle. And suddenly she understood something terrifying. If Roman fell tonight, his entire empire would collapse into chaos. Lily would never be safe again. Neither would Ethan. Claire stepped closer to Roman slowly, her voice turning calm in a way that shocked even herself. "No," she whispered firmly. "We stop running now." Roman's eyes darkened immediately. Because Claire Bennett had just made a decision powerful enough to change the balance of the entire war forever. The war surrounding Claire Bennett's home ended before sunrise. Not because the danger disappeared. Because Roman Cade finally stopped running from betrayal. The rain had slowed outside by the time black armored vehicles surrounded the suburban street from every direction. But these were not Marcus Vale's men anymore. These belonged to Roman. Loyal soldiers still willing to stand beside their king even while the empire cracked apart from betrayal inside its highest ranks. Claire stood in the center of her darkened living room holding Ethan and Lily close while Roman issued quiet commands through encrypted calls. Fear still lived inside the house, but something had changed now. The terrified single mother who opened the door hours ago no longer existed. She became powerful the moment she stopped seeing herself as helpless. Marcus made one mistake. He assumed Claire Bennett would panic. Instead, she forced Roman to fight back. The realization still lingered heavily between them. Roman ended the final call slowly before turning toward Claire. The dim emergency lights cast shadows across his sharp features while exhaustion and control battled silently inside his gray eyes. 4 years, Roman ruled his empire through calculated fear and absolute loyalty. But betrayal from Marcus shattered the foundation beneath everything he built. And somehow, Claire became the reason he did not fall apart completely. Outside, the last vehicles disappeared into the rain-covered street while dawn slowly approached Chicago's skyline. The immediate threat was gone. Marcus Vale fled the city after Roman's loyal captains exposed his hidden alliances across the empire. Financial routes were reclaimed. Corrupt insiders removed. Power restored before rival organizations could fully attack. The king survived. But differently now. Roman looked toward Lily sleeping quietly against Claire's shoulder. For the first time in hours, the little girl finally looked safe. Not because of armored guards or expensive security systems. Because Claire held her gently like fear could not touch her there. That image shook Roman more than war ever had. Claire noticed him staring. "What?" Roman stayed silent briefly before answering honestly. "She trusts you." Claire looked down at Lily softly. "Children know who makes them feel safe." The words hit harder than she realized. Roman stepped closer slowly until only inches separated them. Close enough that Claire could feel the warmth radiating from him despite the cold storm outside. His presence still carried dangerous power naturally, but tonight she no longer feared it the same way. Because she finally understood something important. Roman Cade was not dangerous to people he loved. He was dangerous for them. "You changed the outcome tonight," Roman said quietly. Claire almost laughed tiredly. "I'm a nurse and exhausted single mother who got dragged into mafia chaos by accident." "No," Roman murmured, eyes locked onto hers. "You stood in front of war and refused to break." Silence settled between them. Heavy. Emotional. The kind of silence that changed people permanently. Claire's breath slowed while Roman lifted one hand carefully against her face, rough fingertips brushing softly along her cheek. There was no control in the gesture now. No intimidation. Only honesty stripped bare beneath exhaustion. "You protected my daughter," he whispered. "And you protected my son." What? The thought returned again, stronger this time. Not possession. Belonging. Roman realized at the same moment Claire did. Their bond no longer existed because of fear or survival. Something deeper connected them now. Loyalty freely chosen instead of demanded through power. That was far more dangerous. Ethan slowly wandered downstairs moments later, rubbing sleep from his eyes before stopping completely at the sight of Roman standing so close to his mother. The little boy studied him quietly for one awkward second. Then Ethan asked the question nobody expected. "Are you staying?" Claire's heart skipped painfully. Roman looked toward Ethan, then back toward her. The king of Chicago's underworld had everything money and power could buy. Empires. Loyalty. Fear. Absolute control over cities and governments. Yet somehow this tiny suburban house felt more important than all of it. Roman knelt carefully to Ethan's level. "Only if your mother allows it." Claire stared at him in shock. Roman Cade asking permission felt almost impossible. But that was the final transformation neither of them expected. Claire Bennett no longer stood beneath Roman's power. She stood beside it. Queen. Weeks later, whispers spread through Chicago's underworld about the mysterious woman who reshaped the Cade Empire without firing a single shot. Captain spoke her name carefully now. Claire Bennett. The queen who opened her door to the king during war and changed him forever. But power always attracts new enemies. Far across the city, inside a dark luxury office overlooking Chicago's skyline, a woman wearing silver gloves studied photographs of Claire holding Lily and Ethan beside Roman. Cold amusement crossed her lips slowly. The queen has become his weakness, she whispered softly. Then she smiled. And somewhere beyond the restored Cade Empire, the next war had already begun. Watching Claire Bennett. If this story kept your heart pounding until the end, then Roman and Claire's war is far from over. So subscribe and stay close, because the next betrayal inside the Cade Empire could destroy everything they fought to protect. And tell me honestly, if you were Claire, would you have opened the door for a dangerous Mafia King that night, or locked it forever and saved yourself? Comment below.